Hello everyone, welcome to VOD of Consciousness with Sientir. I'm Sientir, and this is my character, Carmen Angelis. And you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sientir. Plug, because I need to. It's important. And today I'm going to continue my path through these obnoxious enemies that like to knock you over. You can see how much damage all of that does, because like they chain knock stuff down. What's really annoying is these enemies have like a % chance. I think their critical hits automatically knock you down or something. They're just very annoying. And they're super obnoxious to deal with. And on top of Azure Shadows run what is it? They run Signet of Judgment, which also is a knockdown. Okay, good. They got the giant. But like these Azure Shadows here, for example, I was talking about this yesterday, and these Azure Shadows, they don't leave a corpse, so you can't raise minions out of them. So you can raise minions out of these giants here, these Tundra Giants, but not out of the Azure Shadows. So if there's an area that you're going to that's just like nothing but Azure Shadows, then trying to run a Minion Master, Necromancer just doesn't work because there's no corpses to make minions out of. So without corpses, they're not Minion Mancering. Why do I keep calling it Minion Mancer? It's Minion Master. But they're not Minion Mastering. So yeah. I do enjoy the Shiver Peaks. What on earth is this up here? Some sort of, I don't know, Dwarven Civil War or something? Okay, just one of these guys, the don't trip was kind of pointless. Oh, I just saw splash damage from the... So, I guess I could keep trying to talk about the topic that I've been sort of talking about this whole week. But I'm not sure how much more I have to say. I do think cultural stuff plays more of a role in it than people give it credit for, and that people feel because people feel uncomfortable about different cultures and aren't necessarily sure. Like, socialization is a huge deal, right? If you've been taught your entire life that things are a certain way, that's how you're going to assume that they are, regardless of how true that may or may not actually be. And like, that sort of thing can be really deceptive. So if stuff isn't the way that we've been taught, like confirmation bias makes us want to basically assume that things are the way that we've been taught, for starters. And then if things aren't, I'm thinking about how I can salvage stuff to free up inventory space. So I think a couple of these things, yeah, I might turn into similar materials. Those almost undoubtedly become like, oh, those become wooden planks. Interesting. Wooden buckler probably becomes wooden planks too. I'm just salvaging stuff because I need to free up inventory space a little bit here. Summon a miniature flowstone elemental. So yeah, the other thing that I worry about is career activists. Like, when somebody's job is activism, like, I understand how that happens, but then what happens if you're actually successful? You're not incentivized to actually necessarily admit success, or rather, like, there always has to be a moving goalpost so that way you can keep your job, if that's your livelihood. I don't know. I'd actually be really curious if any of you, if there's anybody listening to this, which would be really awesome, and if any of you know of any examples of somebody who says, hey, we accomplished our goal, and now I'm stopping an activist and I'm going on to doing something else. That would be really interesting to hear about. I'd actually really like to hear about that. I got off my don't trip a little late, but oh well. It doesn't last as long as I would like. Ideally, in this area, I wouldn't bring don't trip. I would bring, oh, I forget the name of the skill. I don't have it on this character, so I didn't bring it. And there's a Norn title skill that gives you, that's a shout, that gives you like, I don't know, temporary immunity to knockdown and a bunch of other stuff. That's really, really useful, but I don't have on this character yet. I think you get it from... well, I guess I don't have the quest. I think you get it from a Cephala quest. I don't think I have that particular quest. These doors are getting wrecked, by the way. There you can see Don't Trip was useful, and now it's worn off, and I'm falling over like crazy. Then you have these collectors. These collectors were a really interesting system in this game, where you have drops that enemies have that are considered trophies, like this enslavement stone is considered a trophy type item. If you collect enough of them, you can find a collector to give it to, and the collector will trade it for equipment. So it's a way of being able to get gear without having to get crafting materials and the money necessary to get it and whatnot. So that's really interesting. What the? Live vicariously? Huh. Must be being put on me by one of the dwarves. That's kind of nice. I mean, I will take that. I gain 15 health whenever I hit a foe. How is that not awesome? But like right there, for example, it would allow me to be able to get up to these guys and actually fight them without getting knocked over. Excuse me. Because it just straight up grants immunity to being knocked over. Oh yeah, and of course these guys have Earthshaker, which is an area of effect knockdown hammer attack. I'm going to talk about the game for a little bit. So we're in the Shiver Peaks. Shiver Peaks is divided into kind of two sections. The Southern Shiver Peaks and the Northern Shiver Peaks. If you look at the map really quickly, actually, you can see down here is kind of the Southern Shiver Peaks. Here's the Northern Shiver Peaks, and here's the Far Shiver Peaks. That's kind of how stuff is roughly arranged. So there's late game stuff that occurs down here, and it looks like I probably have done those in hard mode. And then connecting them, you basically go through some zones here and you get to the Northern Shiver Peaks area, which you go through much earlier on in the game narratively. So that's all an interesting setup. But it's really cool because all of the zones in this game like have, for the most part, ways that they connect together, which is really neat and something that I quite enjoy. They changed how that worked in the future games to where you had to complete missions and stuff, and every zone was kind of like there not to fill out the world map, but for stuff to happen in. And that certainly makes sense from a design time standpoint and all of that. But you lose something in that as well. Because this Tyria map here has a bunch of zones and regions and stuff that aren't strictly necessary, that allow you to get from place to place without having to complete missions. It makes for a very different, more open-feeling world than the ones that go through missions. The worst for that was definitely factions, but that's something I'll probably talk about in my retrospective more. Anna, how are you doing? If you're listening to this, write in the comments how you're doing. Tell me how your day's been going. Tell me what you'd be interested in hearing me talk about. Maybe I'll think to talk about it. Maybe I will think to talk about it. It feels like there's going to be a bunch of Azure shadows popping up in here. Probably will be. Boy, it's been a long time since I've made this particular track. I'm not anywhere close to being done with it, by the way. So, if I'm not careful, I'm going to record like a week and a half worth of episodes or something. I've already recorded more than I've already recorded like 4 or 5. Something, I don't know. I recorded a bunch, okay? that's going to be the way up. So let's just fight some trolls. I wonder if there's something I should be doing to increase my damage. I don't think so. I mean, the best thing that I could do is something to help with the knockdown better than just don't trip, which is energy positive, interestingly enough, because of leadership. But I really should not have just used don't trip then. It's interesting too, like what people have been taught about how they assume the world works. This is just something I'm thinking about because, like, something that I really like and support is universal basic income. I think is a really good idea, and in particular, I see it as being very useful when we move to a lot of machines doing stuff. The other thing too that I wonder about, it's kind of a cultural issue thing, is like how long or gold. Gold is kind of the highest rarity. There's also green, but green's kind of an orthogonal rarity. What I mean by that is, like, I should have a green item on this character. Yeah, this Delta or Javelin will always have this exact same set of stats. It's identical no matter where you get it, or no matter, how you get it or whatever, versus something like this Prolonged Spear has modifiers on it. So Gold's going to have modifiers, but, like, Murukai's Blade always is the same, Lari's Double Blades are always the same. So Greens are kind of like an orthogonal rarity, and a lot of them you get from doing special events and stuff. The first ones were like special drops from certain bosses. In fact, the ones right here in Grunt's Footprint and Sorrow's Furnace, which I might go into at some future point in time, but for now I'm just gonna focus on trying to kill some Tundra Giants. Like, we're not even halfway to my destination is the thing that's crazy about this. So, but, you know, that's how it goes. But yeah, so, like, universal basic income is something that, and also, like, how long should people work? For example, if it was normal for people to work, say, 6 hours rather than 8, then you could have stuff where people are working 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for 30 hours of work, and you have 2 shifts instead of, like, 1 shift, and then that's like 12 hours or whatever. But I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff. Thol Boulderrain has a Ranger Elite skill. There's just a lot of stuff where our society is built to function under a certain set of assumptions, and things don't have to be that way. We can technically set up our society to function however we want, but the thing is we all have to kind of agree, and there's a lot of history that kind of keeps things maintained. So it's really hard to change those sorts of things without effectively doing so through the education system. Like, if you teach everyone that this is how the world ought to work, then you can kind of institute change a lot better, because then you'll get it as a generational shift. But if you don't have a good way of doing that, it can become kind of challenging. The society needs to change in respect to the situation that it finds itself in. And stuff does change, especially as people feel like stuff's, whether or not something's worth fighting for, or how they're going to understand things. Like marriage equality, for example. Like, personally, I don't really think it makes a whole lot of sense for the state to be in marriage itself, per se. There's some arguments for stability, familial stability. Dreadnought's Drift is a very small zone, by the way. And then we get into, what is it? Lornar's Pass. But for a lot of the legal benefits, because the biblical concept of marriage has to do with sexual relationships. Like, you're only supposed to be having sexual relationships with the person to whom you're married, which is clearly not how society runs. So that's not an argument. There's definitely arguments about support for children, but in that case, like, any household with multiple parents is going to be long-term, I think, better off for the children than single-parent households, just from an overall stability, childcare standpoint, and that sort of thing. I will say that it seems really weird to me to have both parents work in order to afford childcare, rather than, like, as long as you're able to afford children, I think it makes sense for at least one of the parents to raise the children. But yeah, anyway, what I was saying is, and I'm going to wrap up this episode momentarily here, but is that I'm not even sure how much the state needs to be in the marriage business versus having, like, sort of the legal contract aspect of marriage be handled, like, just kind of divvied up and a la carte and whatnot, so that, like, if you want to be able to be financially tied to somebody, you can. If you want to have hospital visitation rights or whatever else, you can. But I haven't really looked into all of the details of it, though. But yeah, kind of what my point is, like, from a Christian standpoint, why should it matter how the state defines marriage? Because they can't redefine God's marriage, and if the state is defining marriage, they can define it however they want. That's kind of my point. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. So until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.